So this brings us now to the story of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. When he was born in India, it was a different India than we know today. Hinduism had been the predominant religion for 5,000 years. And in Hinduism, they were in a position of being mired in ritual and had really removed themselves from the source. So Brahmanism was very prevalent, where the normal person couldn't access God directly, had to go through the Brahmanistic caste. The caste system had its roots firmly in India, where everyone's life was predestined. And so Hinduism had become stale in that way. At the same time, Islam had started the process of the occupation of India. And although when Guru Nanak was young, it wasn't the Mughal Empire, still the prevalence of Islam, especially where Guru Nanak Dev Ji was born, was very much there from the different invaders that had come from the north and from the west. So he was born into a time of great turmoil and into a time of great change. Guru Nanak Dev Ji, his actual birth date, is one of those issues that is under scrutiny by the scholars. In the Mehraban Janam Sakhis, he writes that Guru Nanak Dev Ji was born in the early part of Baisakh, in the springtime, in the April-May time period. But we know from the modern day that Guru Nanak Dev Ji was born in November, which is actually the full moon of Katha. So when that actually changed from thinking he was born in the spring to the fall, the scholars believe that that was sometime during the reign of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. And it's actually irrelevant, because we celebrate it today in November. And in this year, 2019, we'll celebrate it on the 12th of November. Guru Nanak Dev Ji was born in the year 1469 in Talwandi, which is now the city that we know as Nankana Sahib, which of course was renamed for Nanak. But at the time he was born, it was known as Talwandi. His father was Mehta Kalu and his mother was Mata Tripta. And Mehta Kalu was of the Kshatri caste, which was a fairly high caste. And so he was really known as a good businessman, as a landowner, and really as a privileged household. Nanaki, his sister, was born 4 years earlier. But when Nanak was born, there was a great celebration in the household. The family pundit was given the task of doing the astrology for the new child. And he told his father that he would be this great soul, that he would be someone who changed the world. And the pundit really saw what was the potential of Guru Nanak Dev. And of course his father thought that meant that he would be rich and famous, so he was very happy with it. But as Nanak grew, it became clear that he was a different type of person. I read this wonderful quote about Nanak's nanny, his nursemaid, that she talked about his first words. And in some of the Janam Sakhis, they say that his first word was Gobind, was God. But in this one, it says that his first words were like the smile of an old man greeting a friend. And that gives you this sense of the internal centeredness of this child, the smile of an old man greeting a friend. That's how she described Nanak's first words. So even from the very beginning, it was clear that this was not a normal being that had come to the earth. Throughout his youth, he would not play as young children played, but instead would seek out the holy people. There would always be yogis and Brahmins and sadhus that would be coming by, and he would seek them out and talk to them. And they would let his father know what an unusual child this was. But this didn't please his father at all. He was really wanting him to be a successful businessman, which is something that every father wants for their son, to be able to prosper in this world. And so at the age of 5, he enrolled him in school. And his first teacher had him in school for a very short period of time before he came to his father, to Nanak's father, and said, "It's time for this child to get some specialized training. I've given him everything I can." And his father said, "What do you mean? He's only been in school for this short period of time." And he said, "Yes, but he has already exceeded what I know to teach him." So with that, he enrolled him with Brahmanistic teachers and also with Islamic teachers, because the Quranic teachings were very important in that area. So Nanak was very well schooled in both lines of thought. The family pundit remained very close to Nanak and became somebody that he really relied on. And he was in awe of the growth of this child. He knew from the start that Nanak would be somebody very, very special. So at the age of 10 years old, his father wanted him to take the rites of passage of a high-class Hindu, and that would be to receive the mantras and to take the sacred thread. So they had the ceremony at the house, and all of the chanting was done, the special food was prepared, all of the monies were paid, and it was a really big event for the whole area. And Nanak sat with his family, whom he had great reverence for, and with the pundit, whom he had great reverence for. And he sat and listened to all this happening. And then when the time came for the pundit to whisper the sacred mantra in his ear, Nanak heard it and said, "But what is this mantra that is so special? These are just words." And the pundit said, "Yes, but these are the words that are going to give you enlightenment." And he said, "But you have these words. Are you enlightened?" And the pundit didn't know what to say, because he knew what Guru Nanak was talking about, and he couldn't lie to this small child. And he said, "Please, just listen to these holy words." And then he put the thread on him. But Guru Nanak put his hands up and said, "No." He said, "What will this thread do for me? Will this thread keep me from all of the pains and sufferings of this life? Will this thread keep me from all of the temptations of this life?" And the pundit said, "This was what will keep you strong, and this will mean that you have taken this initiation." And he said, "This thread will actually wear and soil and eventually break." He says, "I have the thread that will never break, and that is my attachment to the Divine One, the attachment to the unseen God." So this is at the age of 10. So we all think of Guru Nanak as having this massive transformation later in his life. But the truth is, he had this awareness from the very beginning. And he had the awareness that God was both manifest and unmanifest, that God was accessible to each and every heart. And he had a way of speaking that didn't create anger in people as he confronted their beliefs and confronted their dogma. Instead, as he gave these words, it just entered their heart, and they understood the meaning of the words and was able to accept it. This is true of almost everyone except for his father. And with his father, he continued to have the relationship where he did not meet the expectations of his father. Many of us who are parents know that this kind of relationship is done because of love. He was probably worried about Nanak, wanting to make sure that he could make his way in the world. But Nanak knew that this was not his destiny. At one point, he gave Nanak the responsibility of the cows. and he was a breeder of cows. He was a very famous in that, his father was. And so Nanak took the cows out into the fields, sat down, and was very typical of what happened to him. He would get himself lost in the love of God. And so he wasn't even conscious of his body, not even conscious of his surroundings. And his mind was linked with the Divine One. And the cows wandered away. And they went into the neighbors' fields, ate the fields, stamped through the hedgerows, and created a problem. And then when Nanak came to and he brought the cows back to the barn, he just didn't even notice that there was a problem. But the other farmers that were responsible for their fields, they saw what had happened and were very upset. So they went to the magistrate, the head of the area, and said, I demand justice. They've ruined this, these cows have ruined our fields, and this family must pay. So the magistrate came to Guru Nanak's house and said, this has happened. You are responsible for the damage that's been done to this field. And Nanak said, no, this didn't happen. There is no damage. And the farmer whose field it was said, I was there, it looks terrible. And so together they all went out to examine the field. And when they got there was no damage to the field. Whatever damage that had been done had been undone by the grace and the dignity of Guru Nanak. This story is a great example of the miraculous stories that you find all the way through the Janam Sakhis. And for us in this time and space, we could look at that with a critical mind, saying that this could be just fantasy, or perhaps they exaggerated over time. But I like to look at this as to let it be what it is. This comes to us as what's written. And people like Guru Nanak Dev Ji, who were born on this earth with such a clear connection with the divine, definitely come with different faculties than you and I. I actually think that future generations are going to understand this better as we understand more clearly the nature of energy and matter, that it can be materialized and dematerialized. And so I accept these stories for what they are and let the future generations figure out the science of it.